All right, good morning, good evening, good night. It is another edition of the Nifty Q Show. We're interviewing influential founders, leaders, and awesome people in the NFT industry. Today, I'm sitting with Gold Mamba, co-founder of BAYZ DAO, an organization looking to build a go-to resource for all members of the RumbleKong League. We'll be talking all things, of course, RumbleKong League, how esports and Web3 align in the near future, how to grow successful communities. And it's going to be a big discussion. You're doing a lot of things here, Gold Mamba, or Derek, if you will, within that ecosystem, but in the NFT industry as a whole. So we'll get to a lot of it. But how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm super excited to be here with you. I feel like I grew up in the NFT space over the last year watching this channel. So on it now is an honor, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm excited for you to join the ranks of full-time NFT people. You were saying before the episode started that you're still grinding away at the full-time job, man. I can't wait for you to come and join us.
Well, it's definitely a goal of mine to spend all my time in Web3 at some point soon. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. So we're going to talk RumbleKong League, of course. We're going to talk BAYZ, which is a esports guild, essentially, or like an NFT gaming guild that we'll kind of talk about, which you guys are a sub-DAO of within that RumbleKong's ecosystem. You also have Kong Magazine. So we have to kind of work our way around like 3 or 4 separate things. So before we get there, let's talk about a little bit about that background of how you found yourself in NFTs, and then we will try to break all of that down nicely.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, my background is more in the tech Web2 space. I spent 15 years working for tech companies, building sales organizations in digital marketing and advertising, especially, but also recently in the artificial intelligence industry, which I love, building some cool stuff. And in that time, I found a few things that I think really I love that space. It's done a lot for me, but, being involved in venture capital deals and seeing how venture capital affects Web2 companies and things like that, definitely some things that don't quite resonate with me as far as how that business works. And when I discovered the NFT space earlier, last summer, basically, it immediately resonated with me for the opportunity it represented for people to get engaged as owners. Like, it's not the same thing as equity, but it's pretty darn close in a lot of ways. And so I got involved in crypto at the beginning of 2021, really went deep on it, spent all my free time learning about it, bought my first NFT in March, and then didn't buy another NFT until August.
Which NFT?
Just a piece of artwork from a friend. And okay. I was like, no, I'm just going to keep, I logged into OpenSea and I looked at everything and I'm like, I don't get what's going on here. I'm just going to stick with crypto. In hindsight, I'm like, man, I sure wish I would have looked into it a little bit more back then. But I, everything that I've learned since getting into NFTs in August has just been amazing. And I was so intrigued and passionate about what I was learning that I just wanted to start writing about it. So I started putting out some articles on Medium under the name Gold Mamba after getting involved in the RKL. And it's just been off to the races since then, man. The community is just phenomenal.
Yeah, before we jump into the proverbial rabbit hole, let's talk a little bit about that background. So you were in the traditional, tech space, I would say, so artificial intelligence. What's going on with artificial intelligence these days, man? Because we don't get outside of our bubble here in the NFT space. What's going on in artificial intelligence these days?
Yeah, I played in a major part of that space called the unstructured data space. So primarily dealing with things like computer vision, self-driving cars, natural language processing, things that involve unstructured data. It's relatively easy these days to do artificial intelligence for data that's structured, like financial transactions, looking for fraud or something like that. That's very structured data sets. But you start getting into teaching a car to drive, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of data that has to be taught to computers. So, I got to learn a ton about how different companies and startups were approaching that problem and help them structure their data better so that they could train their models. And a really exciting space. I spent 3 years doing that for a wonderful company working globally, creating jobs around the world, and learned a ton in that space. It's really cool. I think, we're not going to have drones delivering us Amazon packages maybe tomorrow, but yeah. I think, stuff like that's coming.
Oof. Okay, I want to get to the comments really quick. We have individuals here that are listening to the Nifty Q Show live. Of course, we're going to be on YouTube afterwards, but we're also on podcasting platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, whichever you like. But cool thing is we have comments here, and Easy and Crypto's in the house saying intelligent NFTs. So is there a AI NFT crossover that we should expect in like the next couple of years?
I would say in a lot of ways, blockchain and AI, they're composable sort of pieces of Legos, right? So it's inevitable in my mind that you'll find elements of artificial intelligence applied within the blockchain space in many different fashions. I think I've already seen it in my time just in security applications and things like that. But yeah, I think there'll be very creative applications as things become, especially as layer two opens up a lot of opportunities for people to do things with lower gas fees and things like that. I think you'll see a lot of creativity continuing to explode.
Okay, and last piece there on the origin story, you mentioned how, I guess like investing in all of these seed rounds and all these early stage investments kind of change companies. What did you mean by that when it comes to like something that you didn't like within these venture funds?
You take a company that started from really authentic means with maybe a CEO co-founder, a CEO founder, co-founder, really good culture, really good vibe, doing very well, charts are up and to the right, and you want to grow the business faster, right? And so they go out, they raise money, bring in venture capitalists. Venture capital or PE firms are often well-intentioned, but they're there to make money. And if things don't go according to plan, it puts a lot of pressure on the leadership team and on that business. And not all business models are ready to scale that 3 or 4 or 5x after venture capital investment. And so what I've seen is when that company stumbles, it's a common point at which things can not go so well, or things can be taken to the next level. And so it just puts a lot of pressure on the organization. And oftentimes I think there's a disconnect between the employees who really provide the value to customers and create the value for the organization, who don't have a lot of ownership in that organization, really. I mean, they might have some stock options, but not a whole lot. And they don't really own it. And yet they're expected to build this incredibly valuable thing for the people that do own it. So that's always felt like a disconnect to me. And that's something I'm really excited about the Web3 space, being able to see people get involved and just like I'm part of Looks Rare. I jumped in on that as soon as that airdrop hit, just because it's like, yeah, I want to be an owner in a platform like that.
The composability in Web3 is like the coolest thing about the space, that you can have like all of these decentralized entities work together from that start. Like, for example, you have Rumble Kong's League and you're building out products and features and services, and you actually get to experience that growth, right? Because technically that should go back into RKL.
Right.
That's a really cool aspect of Web3. I'm glad you broke that down, man.
Yeah.
That was
absolutely.
So I kind of want to jump into, and I need to figure out where we're going to start this conversation. So kind of break down Rumble Kong League and what that even is for those people who are uninitiated. The origin story there. I know you're not associated officially with RKL. You're not like the co-founder there or anything like that. But kind of break down RKL for us, and then where you kind of saw the space for you to fit in.
Yeah, it's one of the projects I'm very passionate about. I came across it back in August. I believe it's got started really in its essence back in June, and it minted over the course of a day or two, and sold out. And for those who may not be familiar, it really combines the best of gaming with basketball culture and with Web3, of course. And so if you can imagine having a 3-on-3 basketball game that's blockchain based, where you can play to earn, and yet you can bring in all these elements of basketball culture with entertainment and sports and competition, to create that in the Web3 space. I mean, that had me hooked. I grew up playing basketball. And so thinking that, wow, there's going to be a basketball game I can participate in and, earn from that. That's what got me hooked initially. Now, the team has been phenomenal. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about this project is that the team is not only fully doxed, but they have a lot of credentials that give them a very high, probability of success in my mind. And so you've got somebody like Marcus, who's one of the co-founders, who's also a head of marketing for the Sandbox. Doesn't get much more, plugged in than that. You've got another co-founder, Nick Ev, who is also a co-founder of the NFT platform for rental of assets. They're developing a great platform to rent play-to-earn assets across a number of games. You've got Nas, who's an incredible developer who's built the tech, and then Sick Pencil, who's done incredible artwork. Those 4 guys got together, found each other through sort of Web3 good luck, and created this project, and the community embraced it. And so because the community has embraced the project to such a high level, it's allowed them to go out and raise more funding. So they raised $4.5 million with great strategic investors like CAA Sports, Paul George, Steph Curry got involved buying his own Rumble Kongs on his own accord without, any direct relationship there. So it's just really been a cool organic thing to see it come about. And now the game is in full-fledged development with a AAA game studio, iLogos.
So they just released a feature as well, clubs, that I want you to touch on. But from a timeline perspective, when did Rumble Kong League start? And then what does that floor price look like these days?
Yeah, so the gameplay is not started yet. It's under development. The team is involving the community in that and doing more to get feedback from the community and really making it a co-development process with the community, which I think is fantastic, and I love seeing that. So we don't have a hard deadline for when the first version of the game will be out. What we expect is that the game will initially start in V1 with some automated play features that allow you to put in coaching inputs or something like that, like who to match up or who to play. And so each of the Kongs not only has aesthetic rarity traits like you would see with any NFT project, but they also have boosts that map to different basketball skill sets, like a shooter or a passer or a defender, right? And so those boosts affect or will affect how well the Kong performs in the game. And so it's created a great marketplace dynamic that affects the floor prices, where you've got people that want to buy Kongs, like me. I bought Gold Mamba, and I'm making that my own, but that's a rare aesthetic trait with gold fur. But you have Kongs that have not rare aesthetic traits, but have incredible boosts, like great shooters, great defenders, and those are going for very high prices too. So the floor price is a little bit misleading in the project because of that. But after the funding was announced for the 4.5 million fundraise, you saw a lot of buying, and the floor has basically hovered between 2 or 3 ETH since that time. And I think we're just getting started.
Yeah, forgive me for not putting 2 and 2 together. I didn't realize Gold Mamba was based off your PFP. Now seeing it and seeing your PFP, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? So the PFP project launched on what date? Just a quick lightning question, and then we can bounce off here.
End of July. I don't know the exact date.
Okay.
Beginning of August, around that time frame.
End of July, and that was specifically a time where you could launch a PFP project, have no future plans, or at least any solid future plans for utility, and sell out a 10,000 project or anything like that. But you guys are, or the Rumble Kong is making its way into utility. Essentially, is this gaming feature that's being added.
Definitely. And like, for example, you touched on clubs. That's good. The clubs, there's going to be 300 unique clubs that are introduced as NFT tokens themselves. So each club will require its own token. And you can think about it like regular league play in sports that we see today, right? So you'll have leagues competing in different divisions, and you'll have club owners. And a club owner is, maybe the best analogy for that would be like being the GM of a sports organization, like owning the Dallas Mavericks, right? And you've got a roster, a certain number of spots you can fill. Each club can have 30 Kongs in it. And if you own that club and you recruit, the Kongs as players into your club, you get to run that business and that brand any way you want to develop it. And so it creates this opportunity to have 300 club owners all being their own business owners within and competing within the Rumble Kong League. Now, the clubs will be required for actual league play, for league tournaments and league payouts, but there will still be play to earn mechanics in the non-league play or the non-official play. And there you're going to see some interoperability potentially with other projects, where if you want to play in Rumble Kong League with your Ape or your Punk, there's plans to be able to do that. And I think interoperability is another really exciting utility.
Yeah, this is interesting because you're essentially breaking out what would be like almost a fantasy football roster or fantasy basketball roster and bringing it to the blockchain, being able to actually eventually play physically with the characters that you own or the team that you have throughout the year, and you're getting paid out via that system as well.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And there'll be, consumables and different strategies on how you play the Kongs. And, we're just getting started on that. But, there's a lot of energy in the community about starting to form the clubs. I mean, you already have clubs on Twitter talking smack to each other about, who's got the best branding, and it's all in good fun, to
Mhm.
build their brands. But it's a lot of people are really passionate about it.
Yeah, we're staring down a rabbit hole of like sports NFT organizational talk as well. We've seen like WAGMI United come out, which is a group that is, or a DAO that's trying to buy like an actual football club over
Mhm.
there in Europe. And there's a lot of other things. The Fan Control Football League is another one. I think Bored Ape is involved. Have you heard about these like physical teams here in like the traditional space that are trying to be bought up by Web3 DAOs?
Yeah, I mean, Lynx DAO got my attention with their goal to buy a golf course, right? And before you know it, boom, they sold it out, and they've got to act. I'm part of that Discord. Those guys are doing an awesome job, organizing around their goal. I saw another one I think called Futera that's planning to buy a soccer club and involve the community in like coaching decisions and roster management decisions for real life. That's a really exciting concept to have that blend of Web3 community sort of having this hive mind ownership of
Mm-hmm.
an in real life sporting league. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's a lot like the guild setup that you see in a lot of these Web3 companies as well, which is what we can get into now. So you're a sub DAO of BAYZ. So if you could kind of break out what BAYZ is, and then we can kind of get into how you within the RKL system said, hey, I think we can set up our own sub DAO here or our own DAO within the ecosystem, and this could provide value to RKL. So break out those two things for people who might be hearing about it for the first time.
Yeah, so if you've heard of Web3 gaming guilds, the one that you would most likely have heard of would be YGG, Yield Games Guild, because they are very big with Axie Infinity, founded out of the Philippines. They have a ton of players for Axie Infinity out of the Philippines, but they're a global organization. The YGG token is well traded, and I think they're kind of the model that a lot of other gaming guilds are drafting behind or following the footsteps of. And YGG was actually one of the lead. They led the seed round for BAYZ to invest in BAYZ's 4 million round, which was seed round, which was just announced last month in December. And so, as a gaming guild, of course, there's probably a lot of people on this channel that are familiar with traditional esports and gaming. I don't have a big background in esports and gaming per se, but I definitely get the premise of you organize together, right, as a guild of players to achieve an objective better together than you can if you're all just going it alone, right? Like similar to a DAO in concept, right? So that's already existed in esports for a long time, but sort of under a Web 2 structure, right? So esports organizations forming LLCs and things like that to operate and be, normal business entities. I think where DAOs make it really interesting is that element of ownership, right? The fact that people can get involved, they can have a say, they can own it. And so I got connected as a Kong holder with a fellow Kong holder named Mobile Matt back last fall. Mobile Matt has a deep roster of Kongs, so he's passionate about the Rumble Kongs project, and he's also got a huge background in esports, hence the name Mobile Matt as his moniker. But he has a co-founder that he's partnered with, Joao, out of Brazil, and they have great connections in the esports community, and they put together a plan to found BAYZ and to really be the YGG of the Western Hemisphere, I guess you'd say, where they want to connect a bunch of players to blockchain-based gaming and allow people to come in to play to earn and have that be just an incredible enterprise creating value for all those players. And so YGG invested in BAYZ, and now, along with others like Bitcraft and some other Delphi ventures, really awesome investors in the blockchain space. And now BAYZ is set out to build its organization now going forward. And part of that is recruiting game leads like myself who want to take ownership and leadership for a certain game within the BAYZ ecosystem. So BAYZ already has a portfolio of games, and RumbleCon League ultimately is just one of those that maps to the US, but they're really active in Brazil too.
Yeah, I would love to get into like what esports looks like in Brazil, but I think what the conversation we could probably get into is that relationship between SubDAOs and the larger DAO on like a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. Personally, I'm interested in this. We have a kind of stealth mode guild that we're working on here that has potential leads for a bunch of different Web3 games. But
cool.
just from like also kind of the viewer and the listener here at home, like what does that relationship look like on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis between the SubDAO and the DAO itself? Do they support you financially, and how does this all work?
I think in a lot of ways we're creating this as we go, right? And so I don't think there's one right answer or best practice, first of all. But I will say that part of the vision with BAYZ is to have these economies of scale, basically, with BAYZ. And if you almost think about it, like I use the analogy almost like a franchise model, right? Like you can go open up a hamburger shop and call it Gold Mamba's Hamburgers, or you can go open up a McDonald's and you got a lot higher probability of success to sell hamburgers because there's already a playbook and marketing and all that brand awareness. And so it's a similar concept in my mind, where I was working with a group of Kongs back last fall to figure out, how do we launch a DAO for the community? Let's do it. We're building Aragon, instances and testing tokenomics and stuff. We don't even know what we're doing yet. And that's when we got hooked up with Matt. He's like, look, we could do this together, do it part of BAYZ. And even just something as simple as setting up your DAO legal entity, right? Like that's a simple thing these days. So by being a sub-DAO of BAYZ, not only are we able to have a valid entity under the BAYZ umbrella, but we are able to tap into so many player pools and a passionate community and exclusive benefits that BAYZ can provide. And they're going to be investing in marketing and events and just so many things, and that's going to be great overall for the comms that are part of this sub-DAO. Ultimately, it's going to be a higher value for them.
Yeah, so YGG obviously has tokens specific to the entire organization, also the sub-DAO tokens. Is there a plan to do that with BAYZ as well, or is that currently implemented?
Yeah, it's not currently implemented because BAYZ is such a new organization. The BAYZ token is in development right now. And then certainly, yes, I'm planning to introduce sub-DAO tokens where it makes sense and at a timing that makes sense. So one of the things we're going to be releasing as a sub-DAO is our white paper later this week. We hope people will check that out. And it's going to speak to our roadmap for how we plan to move through both aligning with the RKL and aligning with the development of BAYZ in that regard.
Can you give us any hints on what might be in that white paper? I don't want to put you on the spot here, but anything you got within that you could kind of lay out for us?
Well, for anybody who's worked on trying to write a white paper and try to do an honest job of it, I think I could probably recite the thing at this point. But
nice.
Our thought was, how do we tap into the community, not just for creativity, but of course for crowdfunding, so that the DAO can operate. So we plan to do a crowdfunding round. We plan to use that capital in the treasury to acquire RKL assets like clubs and Kongs, and also not to just be about club play and league play, but we have a vision to actually build and develop world-class tech and services and tools for the RKL ecosystem that you just can't get or wouldn't want to build yourself elsewhere. So imagine a Moneyball dashboard for the RKL that shows you the statistical analysis of how Kongs are performing, how to analyze matchups, and how to ultimately get the best yield out of your team and your squad in the RKL based on the evolving game mechanics and economy. So we want to build some tools like that can serve the community, so that club owners in the RKL, Kong holders, they all want to be a part of the DAO, just not only as something to benefit from an investment standpoint, but because we've actually got tools and services that make their jobs easier as club owners.
How do you balance the relationship here between RKL, which you guys are trying to obviously be within on a day-to-day basis, and BAYZ? Like you're servicing almost two different entities here, obviously in different ways, but are you just meeting with those guys and just saying, hey, this is kind of how we're going to benefit BAYZ, and then RKL, this is what we're trying to do for you guys?
I think it's a symbiotic relationship, really, because first of all, you've got an incredibly competent team with the RKL that is very transparent about what they're building and how they're thinking about it. And so we're planning to be fluid and adapt to that. When they say clubs are going to launch, we'll adapt to that. When they say gameplay is going to start, what the mechanics will be, we're going to figure that out. But so that's one thing. I think the mission of BAYZ is to bring players in to play to earn gaming and to build great tools and technology that serve those players' interests and allow them to compete, give them a competitive advantage. Who doesn't want that? So it's really a rising tide, strategy, in my opinion, which is the better all Kongs do, the better that is for the RKL.
So as far as that crowdfunding piece that you mentioned, that's going to be in the white paper that you plan on releasing, I think you said within the next week. Is there like what is the investor getting on the other side of that when it comes to that crowdfunding mechanism?
Right. So we're certainly looking at how we can add utility and membership benefits in that. Right. And this is a big part of the value proposition of doing it as a part of BAYZ too. Right. Because not only can we have the ability for our members to rent Kongs or participate in clubs or RKL events that the DAO holds. And so there'll be a set of benefits unique to the RKL as being part of the DAO. There'll also be a set of benefits that entitle you to be part of BAYZ. So you joining the Kong DAO as part of BAYZ is like joining BAYZ in a way. And we'll do things that commemorate, membership achievements and, so airdrops, things like that. But the people that contribute to the crowdfunding, certainly, we're going to have, SubDAO tokens that we distribute to them so that those are tradable in the future. But we got to get there, obviously. So we're looking for people that are certainly comfortable, with the risk that this represents in terms of, this is all new and we're trying to figure it out. We try to put together a great world-class team to do this. I'm not doing this alone by any means. You should be worried if we were. We've got some awesome Kongs involved, which will be in the white paper and, with a range of skill sets. So I feel really optimistic about our ability to navigate.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned it earlier in the episode that you had not much esports background. Obviously, Rumble Kong League is trying to be a pseudo esports, platform. How do you look at the difference between maybe players within your SubDAO who are going to be actively playing Rumble Kong League and those maybe that just want to be a part of the SubDAO, just maybe want to get involved as investors or just want to put their capital to work and not put so much time in?
Well, I think you make a couple of very good points there. So for players, every game economy needs lots of players who want to participate, right? And the power of Web3 is to make that gaming economy a global game community, right? So whether it's in Brazil or anywhere else in addition to the United States, having a global pool of players that are interested in getting involved is a critical fuel that drives that gaming economy as it matures, right? I think we've seen that with Axie Infinity as their player base has grown into the millions, right? And allowed them to do incredible things. So I think, and players, of course, are motivated by the desire to climb that league ladder, right? So if you don't have a lot of means to get involved, but you want to come and rent an asset from the DAO and do a revenue share with the owner of that asset, and that gives you earning capability, that makes a lot of sense. And then so for the owners of the assets, of course, we know some very some Kong owners with some very deep benches. They've got a lot of Kongs, and there's no way they're going to manage those teams, right? They're not going to spend all the time analyzing the game and really extracting the most value out of what they've invested in. And so we want to create something with the DAO that allows those whales or club owners to even potentially just come to us and say, hey, Kong DAO, you manage it. You use your skill set, you use your data, you use your tools, and you use your people to manage this for me, and I'll take the revenue split. And that's something we want to do for the community too.
Are there potential pitfalls to have or having, and this is a discussion I have on the channel multiple times as we kind of make our way into building, like you said, as we go, this play to earn economy and adding essentially financialization to games. Are there pitfalls to having DAOs hoard a lot of assets or having large whales in these games? How do you view that as part of the full economy of Rumble Kong League if there's 5 holders that own a ton of the game?
I think that's a challenge whether you've got DAOs involved or not. But honestly, I think a DAO done intelligently, to benefit the community and to bring players in, ultimately can create a lot more value, right? Because if you just have a bunch of, certainly you wouldn't want whales sitting on assets that they're not leveraging in the gameplay, right? So that's not good for the game system. If they've got more than they can use, or if they're dumping them on the floor and just trying to monetize them that way, you want them to be able to monetize their assets in a structured way, and players can help do that. So I think DAOs serve a critical role to help bring those parties together. Like, why you use Uber on your smartphone? Well, Uber is a great app because it connects riders with people who want to drive. And I think a DAO can play a little bit of that role, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out here to the comments again, guys. If you have questions for Gold Mamba here on what they're building within the Rumble Kong League ecosystem, or within BAYZ, and any DAO questions, please drop them in the chat, and I will definitely get to asking them. Mamba, Gold Mamba, Derek, how fast did you make your way into learning about DAOs? Everyone has like a little bit of a timeline. Certainly, there are people who found NFTs still don't know what DAOs are. They're certainly like another rabbit hole in and of themselves. So how quickly did you find out about DAOs, and then did it click that holy shit, this is going to be a whole nother beast?
Yes, I think I'm still in my journey for sure. I'm not an expert, but I do consider myself a constant learner, and I think we all have to in this space, right, to make sense of it. So probably the first time I really understood the power of DAOs was when Bankless started covering them. The guys over at Bankless do a great job with their content and breaking down the industry. And they were really touting, last year, the power of decentralized autonomous organizations to change the corporate landscape. And that got my attention, coming from more of a traditional corporate landscape. Because I had already had the thoughts that, wow, buying these NFTs is almost like having equity in the project, and you're an early stage investor in these projects if you believe in them, and you marry that concept up with the DAO structure as an organization, and it just made total sense to me. It clicked.
Amazing. I got a comment here touching on the specific talent when it comes to play to earn games. So you'll have a specific player maybe in a Rumble Kong League that is better than another player. Are they potentially earning more? And then how do you look at that from a sub-guild perspective of like trying to get a roster of the best players?
I'm a believer in rewarding results and, having a meritocracy in that regard. So, if there's a player who's outperforming other players, they should get more responsibility, right? And that should be transparent for everybody. And the kind of culture I appreciate is one where people don't hoard their secrets, right? Like, that should be an opportunity for others to learn from that person. Maybe I'm a bit idealistic in that regard, but that's what I believe in, is that, people should want to improve, work on their game. That'll be true for clubs too, right? You'll have clubs that are outperforming other clubs. Part of how we're going to measure our success as a DAO and what we're trying to build is, can we take a club of, say, average comms, and can we go out and outperform in a very quantitative fashion an equivalent club with similar Kongs in terms of their stats? Can we outperform them using our technology and tools and management skills? If we're doing that, we can show that empirically, then that should be a pretty strong case study for why you should be part of the DAO.
Yeah, that's almost a Moneyball effect of saying, hey, I could take these average players and maybe make them a little bit better and gain that alpha there. Yeah,
right, exactly.
Yeah, I love that, man. So I want to open this up, obviously, to like any other thoughts that you have on what you're building. I want to maybe hit on Kong Magazine as well and see what you're kind of hitting on there. I guess we could start there, and then I'll hit some other questions before you head out.
Yeah, well, one other thing I would say is, we're new to this, and we're definitely looking for people who want to participate. So if there's people who want to, volunteer their skills or abilities, we're going to be looking to add people to our team rapidly now that we're sort of swinging into motion here.
What does a SubDAO need specifically? Like what are some types of people you're looking for?
Yeah, we need tech skills, data analyst skills. We need marketing skill sets, communications managers, people that can get involved as Discord mods, community managers, helping us plan events, project management. I mean, you start listing this stuff, and it's where I feel like, at least I may not be, a hardcore gamer, but I have been a part of a lot of organizations that are trying to grow. I've scaled multiple organizations from sub 5 million to 50 million plus. And you learn a lot about the roles you need and pitfalls and things like that. So I think that's where I can add value as part of our team. And we're trying to think through a lot of those roles right now. And obviously that'll be a dynamic thing. But yeah, we'd love to hear from anybody that's interested in helping.
Yeah, touch on Kong Magazine really quick. What are you doing with that, and specifically touch on this like idea of community management? You seem to have done a lot of research. If you guys are at home and listening to this, follow Gold Mamba. Go to his blog because he's done a lot of research on what makes good communities essentially. And a Kong Magazine might seem like a very small piece, but it's an indicator that that community actually has things going on. So touch on that as you see it within the broader community.
Right. So the idea, now this is totally separate from the DAO. I tend to, writing these articles has gotten me, opened up a lot of doors, which I'm incredibly humbled by and thankful for. So I can't take any credit for starting the concept of Kong Magazine. I got sort of recruited into it because of my writing, which was awesome. It started with a legendary artist in our community named Mike Fogg, who has started Astro Kongs and Space Hoops. You might recognize some of his work from those. He put out a magazine cover design as an artist that was modeled in the image of Slam magazine from regular basketball, but it was for the RKL. So it had a Kong on it, and it looked like a Slam magazine, but you could tell it was RKL, right? Well, everybody in the community loved the art. He's been making these covers for people. Well, another Kong who goes by the handle of NFT MCMA connected with Mike Fogg and said, "Look, we got to really do this. This should be a real digital magazine." And so we've got a team put together. We just started moving more into production on the magazine over the last month, and we're working through that right now. So the idea is to create an actual digital magazine, produce it as an NFT for Kongs that anybody can read, but only Kongs can mint, and actually have a real magazine. So I've written several articles for the first edition. We've got a team of about 6 people that have made contributions to it, and we're going through art and tech right now to get the first edition out.
That's amazing, man. So kind of give us a little bit of details here as it comes to Rumble Kong League. Do we have a game drop, like actual date for what's going on here?
No, but I think if you join the Rumble Kong Discord, you're going to see, just like today, there was another game dev update. They just let us know earlier last week that they've moved in out of pre-production phase and into production phase with iLogos, and they just dropped a little preview of a stadium today. And they're going to get more involved with the community in terms of making decisions about how it should be developed in a lot of regards. So it'll be interactive.
Yeah, one of the team members you mentioned is part of the sandbox in some form or fashion. Is there already a Rumble Kongs universe? And then along with that, it feels a lot like you guys could build lore with that Rumble Kongs magazine. Is that something that you're kind of looking at when creating it?
Definitely. We want the magazine to be very much like an interactive community generated content experience as well. So not just a centralized thing, right? So one of the things that's in the first edition is an example of a backstory that I have already written about Gold Mamba because, my imagination was flowing on it. But we're using that as an example to call out to the community and say, hey, give us your backstories on your clubs, on your Kongs. And we want it to almost have like a writer's room type effect where anybody can participate in the magazine if their stuff is good enough, right? And I think that not only strengthens the community. You asked about like what makes a strong community. I think it's passion, right? Like the slogan in our community is "We are Kong" or "I am Kong," and everybody repeats that on a regular basis. But it really comes down to being passionate about what we're doing and finding ways to add value, right? Like I'm not a designer, I'm not a developer, but I'm not a writer either, but I wrote some articles because I could. So I think finding a way to get involved and putting value out there, and value comes back to you.
Yeah, you clearly have done a lot of research on, again, this community building. You mentioned YGG earlier in the episode as it's related to kind of the DAOs in a sense, or like the guilds, and how they look at YGG as kind of the flag bearer of sorts. What other maybe DAOs or games or NFT projects have you done research on, or you just know about that you might want to say, hey, let's fashion some of what we're doing after these guys because they're doing this so well?
From a DAO standpoint, a true decentralized organization has no centralized leadership per se, and that's not where we're starting. I think my opinion is that a level of centralized leadership with transparency and community engagement is what's required to move the organization forward and sort of get the flywheel built, right? And I think a project that's done an incredible job of that is CyberCons, which is easy to say when they've got, Genesis Cons going for 100 ETH and all that. But if you look at what they're doing, they've got a council of Cons that represents the leadership of that organization. And then they put a lot of things out to vote in the community with their banana token. And CyberCons, they communicate well. They operate on principles of integrity and transparency and benefit the community, and the community feels cared for. Like they're not going to get screwed by this group for sure. And I think that's what I think of in terms of modeling ourselves after just what we're trying to do in building the organization. In terms of other games that we model ourselves after, it's so early on the blockchain front, so I'm not sure, but there are some games I'm excited about, like Big Time. That's an incredible team with that game. I love what they're doing, and a couple others I've seen, but it remains to be seen who the winners are going to
be. we got some oohs in the chat here, as you mentioned, CyberCons. Yeah, so we got some fans here. Let's talk about maybe some projects that you've seen in your time. And again, you said you've been kind of doing that research for about a year now. What are some, maybe events or projects that you're saying, hey, that's not probably the way that it should be done? Kind of the opposite of giving some good examples. What are some maybe bad examples you've seen out there? Not to throw shade at any project, but if you can say generally.
I can definitely speak to my observations there. I mean, I think it goes without saying, things that are rug pulls are right out. I shouldn't have to explain that. But I've seen some unfortunate circumstances where you've got a project that started with good intentions, not uncommon for it to be anonymous, but there's not really any sort of real plan to execute on a very, aspirational roadmap. And I think I've seen a couple instances where it becomes clear that that's not going to work, and they just drop it. They just drop the project, right? And that leaves the NFT holders holding the bag to zero. And so I've seen several projects like that, and different founders have handled that better or worse. I think a more tricky thing that I've seen in a few projects is you have a founder who may or may not be doxxed, and they sincerely care for the community and want to build, but they don't actually have the organizational development skill set in their background. Maybe they're just a tech dev, or maybe they're just an artist, and they don't actually know how to build a team, build an organization, how to get different functions like marketing going with, development work and pipeline, developing a development pipeline, things like this that have to work together. And that's a big deal, because you're not going to be able to cross the chasm and scale the organization if you can't get the right people hired or involved and in the right seats and everybody moving in the same direction. And I've seen some projects start to stall out because of that. And I hope those founders recognize that they have the self-awareness to recognize that and can turn them around, because there's still potential there.
What's some ideal tips that you would give to those people, because you kind of see different sizes of projects as well? I've got people in my own community that are building their own smaller project. What are some tips you could give? As you mentioned, your experiences kind of scaling companies and products.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's first of all, it's all about the people. There's nothing more important. So you got to have people that operate on the same values as you, first and foremost, because it doesn't matter if they're a phenomenal developer or artist. If you don't share the same value system, it's not going to work. So that's really critical. And then I think it is about recognizing what you need when, and being able to make tough trade-off decisions, because you can't hire for every position when you'd like to. And so you're never going to make everyone happy. I think transparency with the community is a really big opportunity there for a lot of founders. And I think a lot of founders probably have a lot of pride, right? Like, hey, I got this, I'm building it, I'm good. And so it's hard to cut through that pride and recognize, like, wow, we're not going to get all this right. You got to admit mistakes. People respect that. And I'm sure we'll be doing that, right? So I would say, like, for the Con DAO, like, don't judge us on, like, whether we make mistakes or not, but, like, are we transparent about it? Do we engage the community and how we react to it, and encourage the collective solving of those problems, because that's what'll do the best.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown. I appreciate those insights there. I want to hop real quick back into what you're doing with the Kong DAO. And do you have any thoughts in your mind? And I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but are there any thoughts in your mind about potentially scaling this up to maybe other games that you're interested in? Or do you really have a singular model of saying, hey, I feel like I'm going to be here for years. Let's just do it here?
Well, I mean, that hits the nail on the head is why I'm so passionate about doing this with BAYZ, right? Because the Kong DAO started as a purpose to exist within the Rumble community ecosystem. But by having a bunch of members who are part of that, giving them access to BAYZ, and BAYZ is investing in awesome games like Big Time, like Influence, like Meta Soccer, right? Like being able to get cross-pollination of players and ideas and tools and tech across that ecosystem of games, that's super exciting. So as BAYZ grows, our SubDAO will grow and the members will get more opportunities. And that to me is an awesome value.
Okay, last question here on RKL. As far as like from a personal perspective, or for someone that's trying to get involved at home, maybe today, what could they do right now as far as like maybe buying the asset, and then what could we expect from having usage of those assets here in like the next month to next quarter?
Yeah, I mean, if it's Rumble Kong League, certainly the easiest thing to do is go and buy a Kong. I recommend Looks Rare as a shareholder.
Ooh, staking, I'm sure.
And I love what those guys are doing too. But no, you can get a Kong if that floor price is above and the entry point. You can get in on some shoes. There's a Steph Curry shoe drop that just hit. It's very affordable. Where there's actual Steph Curry wearable shoes that will be used in the game in the future. So you can pick those up pretty low right now.
Is Steph Curry involved in that, or is that just a derivative of? Oh, he is involved.
Yes, he's involved in it. It's not a derivative. He dropped his own line of shoes to commemorate the 3-point title, and then has partnered with RKL to release the RKL version of his shoes that will be wearable within the game. So pretty awesome collectible for those out there who already collect shoes, right? You can say you got the first edition of Steph Curry wearables in the RKL.
That is sick.
Yeah. So I think those are ways to get involved. Now, part of the reason the DAO is being created is to allow people to get involved and get exposure to the whole RKL ecosystem at a level that they're comfortable with. So we're going to be looking for people to contribute whatever they're comfortable with, but they need to think of those contributions that they make to the DAO as staked until we roll out things like tokens and things like that in the future. So I don't want anybody to invest anything in the DAO that they're not comfortable with losing or comfortable with being locked up for a period of time, because we want to be fully transparent that we're building this as we go.
This is such a cool conversation that we could dive into, which is that these SubDAOs or these guilds within these ecosystems are almost acting as the onboarding outside of maybe what a project would have is just a traditional Discord, jump into main chat, ask about it. You guys are doing the onboarding for the actual game. And then past that, as more guilds get set up, it almost becomes like a fraternity or sorority rush scene where like a new user will be like, oh, which one do I want to get a part of? And then you have all these different values that you could provide. That's
no doubt. We just did our logo reveal yesterday, and it was for Kongs by Kongs. So it had a sick track with it that was developed by Kongs, as well as the video that was created by a great Kong that won an art contest that we ran. And it's got my mind, the gears turning on like, well, how can we have community generated swag for the DAO, right? Maybe they can design our own swag, and that's an idea that was proposed by Vapor, who does the Courtside podcast for the RKL community. I just love the idea of collective intelligence, right? Like people out there have ideas way better than I do, so let's surface those things and then let people vote on what they like the best and then turn it into a reality.
So Kong DAO, how do people get involved with what you got going on? They go to your, I'm assuming, Twitter profile, get into your Discord.
Yeah, the Twitter handle is BAYZ, BAYZ _Kong DAO. So if you go there, there's a link to join the Discord on Twitter. That's where we have the link to join. And yeah, those are the two things right now. Follow us on Twitter and join the Discord, get involved in the conversation, and help us build something cool.
That's awesome, man. This has been a great convo. I want to open it up to the community one last time. If you have any questions here, drop them in chat and we can get them over to Derek here before he pops off. Derek, I got a quick question. NBA team. Who is that NBA team? I know we talked college basketball. Shout out to War Eagle. Shout out to Auburn University, #1 for the first time. But who's your NBA team here that you cheer for?
So I love great games. I love competition. I don't have a diehard NBA team, but I did grow up a huge Larry Bird Celtics fan. So I have to say, if it's any team, it's probably still the Celtics for that nostalgia of being one of the best franchises in the game. But I love great players. I love LeBron. I think he's an incredible role model of an athlete and a person, and the work he puts in. So I never cheered harder than when LeBron brought that championship to Cleveland, just because of what that meant to him and those people there. Like, so, I cheer for LeBron. I cheer for people I like.
I can't wait for these backstories to be brought into Web3 where you have like and I don't want to use you guys as an example, but maybe a DAO competes for like 40 years and hasn't brought home the championship. Yeah. And you have them finally kind of get it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, no club wants to be that club, right? But it's bound to happen one way or another.
100%. Yeah, you guys are in first, so I'm sure you're going to cement yourself as the Celtic equivalent in that system, hopefully. Matt Radke's asking, when use our cyberconks in RKL? Haha.
Oh, man. Hey, I know I don't know the answer to that question, but I know the interoperability is a priority for the RKL founders, and I love that idea. I think I'm big on projects that have interoperability. Like Galaxy Fight Club is another one that's building interoperable fighters for their MOBA, and I really like that concept because it feels like how Web3 should be, right? Like I have this character I like. I want to use them in the game I want to play.
Love it. Okay, so I think we're about wrapping up here. This has been a great convo. There were a lot of things to touch on, which is probably why I sound like I'm all over the place a little bit in this conversation, but you've done a great job, Derek, of kind of breaking down all these little pieces within a composable ecosystem. I guess the last question I probably have is just, NFT predictions. Where do you see us here in 2022, 2023? What does the NFT space look like in that time?
Predictions are like forecasts in a company. Like they're always wrong and sometimes useful. So, I'm curious, I do think that ETH 2.0 is a really big thing that's sort of on the landscape for 2022. ETH 2.0 rolling out because that's going to unlock a lot of staked ETH. And it'll be interesting to see the effect that has on the market. But I really think this year is going to be the year of layer twos and gaming built on layer twos. So whether it's Immutable X or what's going on with Arbitrum right now, the Treasure DAO and what they're doing with Magic ecosystem to build on Arbitrum, that's just going to keep accelerating. Layer twos are where it's at. Polygon, you might have seen the news just this past week that the head of gaming at YouTube just joined Polygon as a CEO. Hello. Big things happening, man. It's so cool.
So RKL, is that, I don't know why I'm like super out of focus right now, but RKL, is that a layer 2 play there? Or are you guys on Ethereum or is the team on Ethereum?
The PFPs are on Ethereum right now, but they have already said, of course, that the marketplace for trading Kongs and trading consumables and assets will be built on a layer 2. They haven't said officially what one it will be. My guess is, based on what I've read, is probably Arbitrum. But, the Sandbox is partnered with Polygon. These are all great tools in the ecosystems.
Amazing. All right. Anything else you want to get off your chest, man? I definitely have to have you back on here on the show. Maybe we can get RKL on NFT Live or one of the shows across the network as well.
Yeah.
Anything you want to talk about NFT-wise, man?
I'm just one guy trying to make sense of it all, man. So I so much appreciate this opportunity. It's so cool to connect with you. I'm humbled to do it, and I'm thankful. I guess the last thing I'd say is, my mind started off today thinking about this being the 2-year anniversary of losing Kobe Bryant and his daughter and all those people in that terrible tragedy 2 years ago. And God, that just 2020 started off bad with that, and then just got worse, didn't it? But my encouragement to everybody out there is to remember to appreciate the people in your life every day, because money comes and goes, Web3 technology comes and goes, but people are irreplaceable. So make sure you appreciate them.
That's probably the best sign off we could ever have on the Nifty Q show, guys. We will be here tomorrow with Hash Masks, so stay tuned for that one. I was here with Gold Mamba today. Absolutely laid down a fantastic interview here about what he's building with the Kong DAO and Rumble Kong League. So we're going to sign off here. We're going to wave bye to you guys. Thank you for stopping by here, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, man. Take care. Be well.